What's good, people? Thank you as always for passing by the channel. Much appreciated. Hit that subscribe button if you guys are new. All right, let's talk about Anthony Joshua, Dillian Whyte, and Usyk for a few minutes. It's weird because we're always used to hearing about Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury and Wilder. I think it's important that we start talking about the other guys now because those fights against Wilder and Fury are starting to look less and less likely. And those fights against Usyk, Dillian Whyte, and others, I think, are more likely, right? Although I still do hold hope that Wilder and Joshua will get it on just because there's too much money involved. And sometimes that amount of money brings a lot of egos, but eventually, because of the amount of money we're talking, the fight will get done. And I pray to God it does 2020. But for now, let's talk about Usyk and Dillian Whyte. Fights that I think are probably easier to make and ultimately, because they're easier to make, more likely to happen. Usyk's obviously got this fight May 25th coming up against Carlos Takam. Very important fight. His first step into the heavyweight division. Dylan White's got a scheduled fight penciled in against, we don't know yet, July 12th. I'm hearing the names Oscar Rivas and Caballel. Obviously, names I would like to hear will be Povetkin or Ortiz, but those other two guys are decent, better than Manuel Char, put it that way. So both of these guys have got scheduled fights coming up, and obviously AJ's got Jarrell Miller. I was very outspoken when Dillian Whyte turned down an offer to fight AJ at Wembley. I still don't know how real and how concrete this offer was, but we do know there was an offer made, right? He wasn't happy with a number of things, but I think the thing that pissed him off the most, and he vocalized this on an interview with Kugan Cassis, was the rematch clause. He said he wasn't happy that AJ was going to get the lion's share if there was a rematch, if he beat AJ. So it was all ifs, a lot of buts, but regardless, he wasn't happy about it. And he was more willing to put himself in a mandatory position to fight AJ. That would be less money. A split in the mandatory is usually about 70-30, 75-25, but he was more happy to put himself in a mandatory position just because he wouldn't have to go through all this other stuff in the contracts that he wasn't too happy about. He has put himself in a mandatory position, and he's currently the WBO international champion. So he's mandatory to fight Anthony Joshua for that WBO belt. Anthony Joshua has fought his other mandatories. For the IBF, he fought Carlos Takam. I think he was ranked number 3 by the IBF, so the IBF said, okay, that's okay as a mandatory. Povetkin was the mandatory for the WBA. So the only one he's not yet had a mandatory for is the WBO. Obviously, that's a belt he won off Joseph Parker. So that's the one that really should be next. I don't know when. I don't know what kind of leeway the WBO give. I've not had a look on their website in terms of how long. I think it's 9 or 12 months. So he really should be having a WBO mandatory right now. And Dillian Whyte's put himself in a position where, you know what, I'm going to get that mandatory. Just like he put himself in a position for Deontay Wilder's belt, only for it to go to Dominic Breazeale. So he's already fuming about one mandatory. He probably will now start to fume about another one because it looks like the WBO, and this is normal procedure by the WBO, this isn't them shafting Dillian Whyte, although that's what it will feel like. The WBO are going to put Alexander Usyk as mandatory for AJ's belt. That's what they do. Alexander Usyk is classed as a super champion coming up. And if he relinquishes his belt, which he's done now, he automatically gets pushed to be the number 1 ranked heavyweight in their division. Obviously behind the champion, which is AJ. This is very similar to Billy Joe Saunders. Billy Joe Saunders was going to be stripped by the WBO. Let's not forget that because of that PD issue in his fight against Andrade. He relinquished the belt, hence why he's now fighting for the interim super middleweight belt, which will be elevated to full super middleweight belt once Ramirez eventually does go up to 175 pounds. So that's the situation as it stands. Dillian Whyte, who has put himself in a mandatory position as the WBO international heavyweight champion, looks like he'll be stepped over by Alexander Usyk, who's classified as the super champion, and he will therefore go to the number 1 ranked position. I don't know what this means in terms of timeframes. I don't know if it's a case of if Joshua beats Jarrell Miller, that the WBO are going to force him to fight his mandatory next. I don't know. I think they'll still prefer him to have a unification against Deontay Wilder. That will definitely kind of take precedent in all of this. But again, for Dillian Whyte, you can't be happy, right? You've put yourself into mandatory position again, and it looks like, once again, you're not going to get your title shot. Even if Anthony Joshua beats Jarrell Miller and the WBO say you need to fight your mandatory next, and that mandatory is Usyk, I'd be shocked if that fight happens next. I'd be shocked if Usyk fights Joshua next. I mean, Usyk could put on a fantastic performance against Carlos Takam, like outstanding, and everyone might start calling for it. Thus, it turns into a bigger fight than it is now. I still don't think it's a big fight now, but if he destroys Carlos Takam, and everyone starts saying, you know what, we want to see Joshua versus Usyk, then it might just happen next. I still think, and call me crazy, I still think the fight that will happen next is Joshua versus Wilder. I don't know why I think that. I just think that's the fight that will happen early 2020. And I've been saying this for 2 years now, so I don't know. But That's the situation right now with Dillian Whyte. It's news that he probably expected. He knows how this works in terms of the WBO super champion and being elevated from a lower division, but you can't be happy nonetheless. If you're Usyk and you're put into this mandatory position, do you take that fight against Anthony Joshua immediately? I think so. I mean, what are you waiting for, right? Usyk isn't 25, 26. You take that fight immediately. It's a big fight. It will happen at Wembley Stadium. I don't think it will happen in America. It'd be stupid to do it there. What do you guys think of this? Fair on Dillian Whyte? Not fair? Dillian Whyte, by the way, is trying to literally cover all the bases to get a world title shot. Obviously, he's next in line for the WBC. He put himself next in line for the WBO. And he did try and fight Manuel Charr, who is the regular champion, which would have put him next in line for the WBA. So he literally is trying to cover every single base. I think Kubrat Pulev is still the IBF #1 ranked heavyweight. So, I mean, that should be a fight they're looking at as well. But again, not good news for Dillian Whyte. What do you guys think? Let me know. Peace.